There's this feeling that most of us just haven't named. You've been staring at this document, this Slack thread, this computer all day, and it's thinking, like, sort of, right? But nothing real is happening. Then you go do something with your hands, like cook dinner, pull weeds, clean the dishes, do laundry, and it's like your brain starts working. The idea you were chasing just like arrives. This video is about why that happens and why that isn't an accident. Cognitive scientists have a name for what makers have known intuitively. It's this thing called embodied cognition, and it's the way that our bodies and our minds connect with each other. And it's why when you're sitting there on a screen all day, staring at messages and typing on a computer and words popping up across this blinking screen, that's why there's this disconnect between us and what we're doing and our minds. Embodied cognition is this idea that it's not something that just happens in your brain, it happens in your whole body. It has to do with our relationship with the world around us, not just in our brains, our body's connection to everything else in relationship with the world. Your hands aren't just executing what your mind decided. It's like having a relationship with it. It's taking part in the thinking itself. The making is the thinking. Don't get me wrong, screens are pretty crazy, incredible tools. I mean, obviously we use them all the time for a very specific reason, because they help enhance our lives with all of the technology that is involved in them. However, because everything about them is infinitely reversible, infinitely changeable, there's infinite speeds, there's infinite distractions. You can literally delete anything. You can undo anything that you did, except maybe that one picture that you sent. We don't have to talk about that. This means that like the thinking that you're doing on a screen, because it's always reversible, it's like provisional. It's just like one step removed away from actual commitment. Screen thinking is fast and frictionless, which kind of sounds like it should be a feature. But friction is where a lot of the best thinking actually happens. When everything is easy to change, nothing quite forces you to decide. The sad thing is we built our entire work culture around this exact kind of thinking. And then we wonder why it's so hard to feel anything real. I mean, think about clay. Clay is unforgiving in the most instructive way. You push too hard and the wall collapses. If you're not centered, nothing else will be either. You can't undo a collapsed wall the way you can undo what you just typed on your computer. What this teaches us, this molding of clay and having to work with it, is that your thoughts and your decisions and your actions have physical consequences. And even though that forces like a slower, more painful process, that pain is generated because we're so used to things being done so quickly and the outcome being so reversible. There's this thing in pottery called throwing with intention. And what it means is that you have to throw, the act of throwing the clay, and the intention for the piece have to arrive at the same time. You can't be half present with the clay. It will tell on you immediately. That's not frustration, that's a gift. It's training your nervous system to mean what it does. I think so much of today, our nervous systems are all over the place because we're interacting with such a fast-paced world, and we're never forced to sort of reckon with the moment in front of us. It's just fleeting and, like we said, reversible. But when we do things with our hands that force us to slow down, it makes our nervous system have to be so present in that moment, and it has to direct our attention so directly to what we're doing that it creates more of an alignment between what our body is doing, what our mind is doing, and what our hands are doing, and the present moment in front of us. Letterpress printing is this process of setting each letter step by step in the form that you intend for it to be written. Each letter has to be laid down so that it can be pressed. And then it's pressed into paper. This is a super slow process. It's deliberate. It's intentional. And honestly, it kind of changes the way we think about language. Thank you, Gutenberg. I mean, seriously. Like, can you imagine the way that books used to have to be made letter by letter in a printing press? Insanity. I think what's super cool is, like, depending upon the medium that you use, it sort of edits you. It forces you to kind of hone in on the specificity of the moment, especially when things can't be undone so quickly. Like I'm having to redo it, unraveled, so I'm having to reset my knitting. It's okay, it'll be fine. But this is a prime example of how, I've been doing this ever since we started this video, and I'm still not done yet. So it's just this irreversibility of the moment whenever we're doing something with our hands versus doing something that's a lot more ephemeral and fleeting than something on a screen and on a computer. Have you ever tried to sit down and draw something? I'm not an artiste when it comes to drawing, for sure. And like when you sit down to draw, you think you know what something looks like, but then when you try to draw it, you actually can't recreate it very well in your mind. And I think that's a really interesting thing because we haven't sat with the thing long enough to really understand its component parts. So when it comes to drawing it, it kind of forces us to recognize those little tiny elements that we wouldn't necessarily otherwise need to even see. And I think that's cool because when you start drawing more frequently, you start noticing those smaller components more easily. So the hand is training the eye and the eye is training the hand. And that's a super cool connection. That's only done because you're forced to kind of slow down and actually realize the small component parts of everything that you're trying to recreate through your drawing. There's a long tradition of thinkers who keep their hands busy while their mind works. Knitting and crochet operate in a really particular part of the brain. The hands are the thing that finds the rhythm, and then the mind is the thing that releases the grip. So it allows us to kind of take a different perspective at thinking, just because our hands are busy and our mind is letting loose a little bit, because it's such a rhythmic process. Unless you're doing what I'm doing and having to repiece it all back together. Honestly, I think this is why so many writers, strategists, deep thinkers do things like knitting and crochet. It allows the rhythms to kind of separate the mind, and your hands can work, and it allows your mind to think differently. I'm going to argue this. Things like knitting and crochet are not procrastination. It's actually access. The repetitive act of knitting and crochet, maybe even needlework, those of you who embroider, it activates and occupies just enough of your hands to allow your brain to sort of be released, to stop the overthinking and to kind of settle into its own thoughts. I'm not kidding. When I started knitting, I was in my first few years of teaching, and then I started embroidery. Honestly, I think it saved me from so much anxiety because I was able to kind of occupy my hands with something that allowed me to be, physically present in the moment, but then it also allowed my brain to kind of think in a different way because energy was being directed into something that I was doing. And I think that's such a super cool thing, this mental and physical connection with your hands that we really honestly miss out on so much of in the modern world because we do so little with our hands that's not actually tangible. It's not actually something that sticks. And I think here's the thing that people don't say enough. You don't have to be good at this. The making is not necessarily the thing that you're after. You're not just creating something. You're doing something that's good for your entire well-being, your entire nervous system. The whole process of making something with your hands isn't and shouldn't be reserved for skilled makers. It's honestly available to anyone who's willing to be a beginner. And making something, even if it's badly, as a beginner, learning how to do it from the beginning, starting over, struggling with it. I think that's kind of the whole point. That's the whole practice in making something. It's not about the object at the end. It's about the making of the thing. The process of what happens whenever you're making something with your hand, that's the end game. That's the end result. What happens in your brain and what happens in your body when you're doing things with your hands. The whole commentary around I'm not creative, I wonder if that's directly connected to how much we do things on computers. I argue that if we lived in a society where we were forced to do things more directly with our hands that had a specific outcome and work towards that outcome with our hands and with our minds, I wonder if the whole quote unquote lack of creativity would dwindle. The lack of creativity, or the people that claim to lack creativity, it seems to be rooted in this whole problem of having to think fast, having to think in ways that are reversible easily, or having to think in ways that are going to be evaluated. Hand thinking, it's slower and it's intentional. and it's not reversible. And honestly, it doesn't perform. It's there to create something. And whatever the thing is the outcome. And honestly, I think doing things with your hand, if you haven't lately, give it a try. Let me know. Let me know if you do. Let me know in the comments if you do something with your hands that you haven't for a while. And let me know if it surprises you. Let me know how it makes you feel. Honestly, that's what the Muse Salon is all about. It's all about slowing down our thinking, reprogramming some of the fast-paced evaluative thinking that our modern society forces us to do. And it's tapping back into that creative energy that we can use our hands and our minds together to help alleviate what we're feeling in our bodies. And I'm hoping that we can create a really strong community around that too. I think that's something else that we're missing in our lives is the sense of community. And if it can be around creativity, heck yeah, why not? Let's do it. So the Muse Salon, we're gonna have our first one on May 30th here at Muse. And if you're in Asheville, if you're around, I think that's kind of the whole point of the Muse Salon is making and thinking in a room together with other people and seeing how that kind of shifts the environment, shifts the vibe, shifts your body, shifts how you connect with the physical space, the people around you, and with yourself. So if you're interested, May 30th will be our first one. Hope to have one every month. And it's all about community and creativity and kind of tapping back into that whatever source code is deep inside of us that we need more of. So thanks for being here. I'm going to keep working on this. This is going to be a bit of a long project, but I'm back on track. I was able to kind of reverse the undone stitches. We'll see. I think I'll be here for a bit, but I'm okay with that.